Good evening. I would like to call to order this Tuesday, June 4th meeting of the Monmouth City Council and ask Phyllis Bowman for the roll call, please.
Here. Counselor Carey,
Here.
Counselor Lopez,
Present.
Counselor McKeel,
Here.
Counselor Oberst,
Here.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Here.
Mayor Coontz.
I am present and I will lead us in the flag salute this evening if everyone would join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first, this evening, we do have two meetings scheduled. We will have the regular meeting of the Monmouth City Council and followed by a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency. Our first item on our regular council agenda is the consent calendar, and that included the minutes.
This conference will now be recorded.
Of our last meeting on May 21st.
Move approval. You can't hear that? No? Huh.
Huh. Yeah, not sure.
I'm still on. See,
All right, the consent calendar consists of the minutes of the council meeting of May 21st.
move approval.
I'll second that.
Thank you for the motion, Councilor Oberst, and the second, Councilor Salinas Oliveros. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, thank you very much. That brings us to public comment, and we do have 15 minutes set aside this evening for public comment. We have 3 speaker cards before me, so we'll go ahead and start that. If each speaker will mind to stay to 3 minutes, we will be timing the comments. And first, Bodie Bemrose. Bodie, can you come on up, and when you are seated, your name, your residence, and then you've got to push the button, and the red means it's on. So a little confusing there. When you press it, it'll turn red, the silver button. Yeah, we try to help out people online, make sure they can all hear us as well. So, there we go.
There we go. Can you hear me? Okay, remind me again, what am I supposed to do?
Name and residence.
Okay, my name is Bodie Bemrose. Right now, my residence is not in Oregon. I moved to Tennessee, but I still manage and lease all our investments here on Main Street in Monmouth and pay property taxes. And we are back and forth, of course. My wife, 10 years now at the Find. We just celebrated this last year, her store. she's back and forth here a lot more than I am. But anyway, we are on the phone every day to people here in Monmouth. So even though we're a long ways away sometimes, we're still very much active. The reason I wanted to talk here is I know that there's talk of another proposal for a homeless shelter, low barrier shelter. And as a landlord I've got over 30 commercial tenants and we've got some residential tenants as well. They always call me. And when I try to encourage them to talk to your city leaders, I get the brunt of it and the concern and the fears. Well, I also deal with, after 5 o'clock, it's a whole other world around here. And I have my crews that still go around and try to make sure we keep our buildings and the back alleys clean. And it is getting frustrating when we call the police and say, we've got some guys back here, and they say, there's not much we can do about it. That has changed since, I started fixing these buildings up when I was 32 years old in 2005. Both Johns, remember those days? John Oberst was the mayor. We had a lot of dust flying down here on Main Street, and we had a major transformation. That was an amazing time for everybody. We're proud of our downtown, but I can tell you that these low barrier shelters and these ideas to place them in good neighborhoods of what these proposals are saying is just, it's not wise, and it's going to damage our reputation as a city. It's going to change the livability. It's going to stop grandma and grandpas from bringing their kids downtown. It's going to hurt businesses. We deal with it already. There's been an uptick of homeless people, people that have serious mental illness. They stumble into these shops, and it's not fair that the businesses have to deal with it. And because they can't rely on our police force all the time, and it takes too long to deal with it. So either I'm dealing with it with our handymen and contractors, or they're dealing with it with their employees, and a lot of their employees are college students. And with this idea that something's going to be put in here on Stadium Drive next to our beautiful campus is just not wise. I have met and talked with the Church in the Park group. I have had meetings with Brett DeMoe. Brett DeMoe, I can tell you right now, is not doing anyone any favors. He's disrespectful to everybody. And is that my bell?
Your time is up.
Okay. What I'm saying here is that if this is going to go in over here, then I'm assuming that Edwards Edition is going to get one too?
Your time's up, Bodie. Thank you.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Todd Wilson. Same thing, name, residence, and looks like the red light's on. So if you could just speak into the microphone, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Todd Wilson, and I live on Fishback Road. We have a Monmouth address. As I understand it, we're longtime customers of Monmouth Power since '86 when we moved here, and we put in a solar system last October. And as I understand it, and I believe it's so, the city council determines the Monmouth Power policy concerning solar power and how residents with solar power are reimbursed, or how they, well, I'll read on. Last October, we made a substantial investment with the aim of reducing our monthly bill, as well as to do our part to help the environment. But as summer continues, our panels are generating surplus energy. But the savings is much less than we expected due to Monmouth Power's billing policy. Currently, Monmouth Power does not use one-to-one net metering. Now, this is a common phrase for power companies. It means that any excess energy that our solar panels produce, we get to use that energy as a one-to-one payback. We get to forward it to the wintertime when our solar panels really don't produce much at all, or in the evening hours. As it is now, if we don't use our solar during the daylight hours, we are only getting the wholesale rate. So any excess energy, we are paid 3.5 cents and for the excess energy. What we would like is what our neighboring power companies, Consumer Power, Pacific Power, and PGE, all allow for one-to-one net metering. This makes a good financial investment for homeowners. We have found without that policy, we really are looking at maybe a 20-year payback. With this one-to-one net metering, we're looking at more like 10 years. It makes a big difference. And also, we're hoping to be able to use our energy we produce, for off hours or winter time when we really need it. And I'm not sure if I see consider adoption of resolution number 1988 electric rate adjustment. Was this going to be considered tonight, or is that something different?
This evening, we do go through the process of reviewing all of the rate adjustments for next year. I'm going to let you know your time is up, and I'll also let you know that Wade Carey, the director of our Power and Light Department, is back there. And if you haven't spoken to him about this, I
No.
suggest doing so. We actually covered it at our budget meeting this year, and he may have some better information for you. So,
Yes, I've had very good conversations with
Okay.
Wade.
Great. Thank you so much. And Elliot Dickinson, same thing, name, residence, and we'll hear your comments, sir.
My name's Elliot Dickinson. I live on Broad Street here in Monmouth. I was here 6 years ago talking to you because the house next to mine on Broad Street was burned down in a controlled burn by the fire department. And that was just an enormous mistake by the fire department. The house that was burned down was too close to mine, and it melted the windows off my house. And it completely polluted the entire block, and it was terrible. And long story short, I looked into it, and Roger Griswold, who's the developer, he said that he had the house that was burned down checked for lead paint and asbestos, which he didn't. He lied. And so I called the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, and they came and did a check, and they found both asbestos and other pollutants. And they fined him, I forget exactly, but something like $15,000. And they fined the local fire department a bit more than that. So total, 30-something $1,000 between them in fines. And right about that time, there was a story in the Oregonian back when the newspaper was delivered here in town. And it was a front page expose about how lead dust is absolutely toxic. Toxic for children especially. It's bad for brain development. And I'm not just saying this, there's a lot of evidence backing this up, scientific evidence. And the story was about how in Portland, they have banned the burning of old houses. And that's what really got me, was in Portland, if you burn down an old house, or it used to be, they warned everybody in a 300-foot radius that there was going to be toxic lead paint burned in the air. And so they stopped doing that in Portland. Well, the reason I'm here now is because last month, another house was burned just a few blocks from here. And maybe you all smelled it. But that was an old house. And it was full of lead paint. And it polluted the entire town. Now, when I got up that Saturday morning, and I smelled that toxic smoke, I tried to track it down. And I finally, found the source. So that's just terrible air pollution. And again, it's worse for kids. It's really, really bad for their brain development. So the fire department, they passed out hot chocolate for people to come and watch. That's not the way to do it. And so I would ask each of you, please, let's have a policy here in Monmouth where we ban burning of such houses. I know my time's up. The last thing, it's related, different but related, it's noise pollution, and it's from that bar that's on the corner there. And they play live music too loud, and that is noise pollution for this town on a Saturday night. So please stop that too. Thank you.
Thank you. And have you spoken to the fire department board?
I did. Well,
Because they have an elected board just like we do. So.
Yeah, I went and talked to the fire chief.
Yeah.
I missed their meeting, their monthly meeting by a couple of days,
Okay.
but I did talk to Ben Stang.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
you're welcome.
Otherwise, I was going to volunteer to forward your information so they could reach out to you.
And the last time I was here to talk to you, one of you is a nurse, is that right? Or was a nurse? No.
None of us. We've
The only
changed
person who
hands.
listened to me and said thank you was the woman who used to be a nurse that was on the city council. And I want to thank her, whoever she was.
We'll
because
pass that on to her.
I felt
Yeah.
like she was the only one that listened.
Yes. Yep.
So, okay,
Thank you. All right. That brings us to our business agenda. We have multiple items this evening that are a result of our budget process. And I think we actually are starting with Susie Marston, our finance director. And Councillor Carey's getting his budget notebook for all of his many questions.
Good evening, Mayor, fellow council members. Susie Marston, City Finance Director for the record. Tonight, I am here to present to you resolution number 1988, a resolution increasing electric utility rates. Staff is recommending a 4% increase to the electric rates, in addition to a $1 increase to the basic customer charge. What this means for an average home or apartment is an extra $4.56 a month. This rate increase is based on the 5-year financial forecast for Monmouth Power and Light. It is also, steady rate increases are also designed to support the increased cost in staffing levels and planning for future capital improvements, while also meeting the 25% reserve requirement for the fund. In fiscal year 25, we do have budgeted for a rate specialist to come in and look at the operations of Monmouth Power and Light and give us a whole big picture and make a plan moving forward, which will include future rate increase recommendations. So with that, I would welcome any questions.
Councillor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much, Susie. Not a question, just an observation for the record. These rates, and this is carryover from discussion held at the Budget Committee. These rate increases are significantly lower than what customers of private power utilities, such as Pacific Power, are experiencing. And so while I recognize that rate increases are always difficult matters to deal with, and we hate to see any additional burden be placed on, the residents of Monmouth and the individuals who, are impacted by those rates, even outside of the city. Our rate increases are tracking significantly less than other areas and the rate increases of other private companies. And so while it is difficult to, stomach any increase, especially in the face of increased inflation and increased costs everywhere, I am in support of this rate increase as a moderate increase and something that is appropriate for the situation that our power utility is in. Thank you.
Would you like to follow that up with a motion for purposes of additional discussion?
Okay, I'll hold the motion until after.
So, and with the danger of piling on to our neighbor investor-owned utilities, not only are our rate increases lower, but our rates to begin with are considerably lower than investor-owned power in general. And so, again, yeah, everybody hates a rate increase, but when you're increasing a lower rate by less than your competitors, that's pretty good. So that's all.
Counselor Carey.
Just a question regarding the difference between, and we're talking about a 4% increase in the consumption rate. We've also got a $1 over 12, which is about an 8% increase in that basic customer charge. And the question really, so that's a little, that's a little more than the 4% we're talking about. However, I'm not suggesting it's not needed. I just wonder, is that used differently in any way? The base charge and then the consumer charge?
No, so if I'm understanding the question, is the revenue that it generates used any differently?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not. It all is considered customer revenue, customer rate revenue, depending on what class they fall in.
Okay. And then, and it's not necessarily related to you, but I think it's an appropriate question given our testimony early. In our budget meeting, Director Carey suggested that they're going to be reviewing this whole net metering. And I'm just wondering how that's going. I mean, do we have a plan on that, or is there a time frame? He's got his hand up.
Yeah. Did you want to come up?
Because he acknowledged, we recognize, and Wade is new, and so he recognizes there needs to be some tweaks on this. So he's been affirmative on that, and whether it's not going to be done today, but hopefully it'll be done, in the near term.
Actually, Councilor Carey and rest of the council, in the rate schedule for the generation, it states in there the switching to a yearly true-up. So I know in my previous presentations to you, we've talked about this, and that was one of the things that we really needed to do. And it is part of the new rate increase or rate schedules. So really the thing that's been holding us up is the billing software and the bill print. And Susie and her folks have been working on that. And last I heard, we're ready to go with that, or really close.
Maybe another one.
So, but it is part of this new rate schedules is the switch to a yearly true-up, which is a definite benefit for our customers. And 15 years ago would not have been a benefit for Monmouth Power and Light, but in today's power supply world, it is definitely a benefit for us to promote solar or any renewable.
Right. And that means really that there will be a true-up on a monthly basis or something, rather than it used to be yearly.
No, we're currently doing monthly now.
Oh, and you are going to go
Which
to yearly.
means say in August, when a solar system is going to generate a great deal, people are paid, the customers are paid the excess that they generate at the wholesale power rate. Avoided costs is what we refer to it. When we go to a yearly true-up, those excess kilowatt hours will be banked and carried forward until such time that their generation is less than their consumption, and then they will work off those credits at a 1-for-1 retail rate.
Yeah.
And we'll true up in March, so they'll have all winter to use any stored credits.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And would you like to follow up with the motion, Counselor Carey?
Pardon me?
Would you like to follow up with a motion?
Oh, didn't we have one?
I was waiting to make the motion if I may.
Councilor Lopez is dying to make the
Ah,
motion.
I am, yes, indeed. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councilor Carey. I move approval of Resolution 1988, setting rates and charges for the electric utility service and repealing Resolution 1965.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Lopez for the motion, and Counselor Salinas Oliveros for the second. And seeing no further need for discussion, I'll have Phyllis do the roll call, please.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, thank you. And that takes us to the next utility, our water utility fund.
The next resolution I'll present to you is resolution number 1989, a resolution to increase our water rates. Staff is recommending an increase of 5.5%. And what this means, we've broken it down depending on house size, and the idea behind that is the number of people in the house. A smaller house, you'll have fewer people, whatnot. So for an average household of 1,000 square feet, we're looking at a $1.65 increase per month, going up to a 3,000 square foot house, $2.98 a month. This again is based on the 5-year financial plan of the water fund. We do have a rate specialist budgeted to come in next year for the same reasons that we're bringing one in for Monmouth Power and Light, to look at the whole financial picture and determine what our capital needs are and what that means financially in the way of continued rate adjustments. We do recognize that the water fund has healthy reserves beyond the 25%, but we know in the horizon, this budget includes our CIP document, which plans through fiscal year 29. But we have more beyond that we could fairly anticipate if those projects move forward, like the regional water plan. We would need everything in our reserves that we have to afford those projects. As an example, if we figured if the city needed to take a $15 million loan towards a regional water project, a 30-year loan at 3%, the debt service payment is estimated to be about $800,000 per year. So we'll need the reserves coming up in the future. So staff recommends the rate increase of 5.5% for this year.
Thank you. Go ahead, Counselor Salinas Olivero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you said 5.5% for this year.
Yeah.
Do you foresee that this is a continually increase amongst, 5 years, 10 years, or is this 5.5% for the next 3 years, the next 5 years?
I think we're going to have to evaluate it again next year once we have the rate study come in and once we know more about what direction we're moving on the regional water project, to see where that looks like in the next year.
Yeah, thank you.
Counselor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm ready to present a proposal. I move approval of Resolution 1989, establishing new rates for water service and repealing Resolution number 1967.
I would second that.
Thank you, Counselor McKeel for the motion and Counselor Oberst for the second. Any additional questions, Counselor Lopez?
Not a question, but another comment. The nature of these rate increase proposals is drawn from the recommendations of the Budget Committee. Each and every one of these proposals is tied directly to the proposed budget by the Budget Committee, which is comprised of equal parts local elected officials and residents of Monmouth. This budget season was the most difficult budget season that I have been through since being a city councilor here in our city. And these rate increases are not easy ones to make. I know I spoke in favor of the last rate increase. I will be voting in favor of this rate increase as well, with a heavy heart. I do believe that having, safe, clean water for the future of the city is imperative to the city's well-being today and the future growth. Securing our water needs is integral to, everything that we hold dear in the city. Water issues are across the state going to be larger, more severe, and more difficult to deal with as each passing year goes by. This is an issue that cities across the state are dealing with, and across western states and the greater nation. However, I can speak directly to issues across the state. The League of Oregon Cities, with which I am, is an organization I am involved with, representing municipalities across Oregon. Everyone has water high on their minds right now. And while another rate increase, again, is difficult to stomach, the safety of our water and the security of our future supply of water is imperative. Small increases now will help us mitigate huge expenditures in the future. So I will be voting in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Counselor Carey.
Well, I'll move approval of resolution 1989, establishing new rates for water service and repealing resolution number 1967. Is that the right one?
We already took care of that, actually. We're in the
Motion?
questions. Yeah,
Oh,
we're good. Moved and second.
so I withdraw my second motion.
Thanks. All right, Phyllis, roll call, please, on resolution number 1989.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Carey.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to the resolution regarding our stormwater fund rates.
Okay. So tonight you have before you resolution number 1990, a resolution increasing the city's stormwater rates. Staff is recommending a 5% rate increase, which means 69 cents per equivalent service unit for each person. And that's based on the amount of impervious area somebody has. So the Stormwater Fund is a fairly new fund. It's growing. We've identified about $3.1 million in capital projects over the next 5 years. And so this rate increase just supports the increasing costs of operating our stormwater fund while also planning for future capital needs.
Questions or comments of Susie for the stormwater fund? Counselor Oberst and then Counselor Carey.
So we first started talking about a stormwater fee 20 years ago. It took a little longer than that to actually get the thing in place. And I know we have not just stormwater projects that are impacted by this, but I think most of us like our leaf pickup, most of us like our street sweeping. And if we didn't have this storm fee, and a storm fee that, like most things, is going to creep up a little bit in price every year to cover its expenses, we would lose those things in addition to not being able to do some important capital projects like replacing collapsed stormwater lines and putting stormwater lines in where they don't currently exist and so on. So I'll just sort of echo what Councilor Lopez has said. This went past the budget committee. It's never easy to raise rates. This one I'm in favor of as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Counselor Carey.
You know, in the previous proposals for rate increases, we've referred back to rate studies that we have done. In 2020, we did a rate study for this, and there were projected rates coming forward. Beginning in 22, that's when we established our ESU, the initial one, that's what it was. Understanding we needed to begin to build capital. In 2023, the rate study suggested 10% increase. Understanding that it'd be a bit of a tough bite, but we had to do it. In 2024, current fiscal year, there was a 5% recommended by the rate study. Now, in 2025, which is the budget year we're in right now, that rate study recommended 1%. And then in 2026, it recommended a 0 rate increase. Now, I understand things have changed, but we've gone from a recommended 1% to 5% without a lot of discussion. And we missed that in the budget committee, or we didn't get to that, but we're dealing with two different charts here. One that was prepared, and certainly we need to be able to modify these, but we need to have a discussion about that. So that's my first issue. If we followed the rate study, we'd have a 1% increase this year. And then the other thing that troubles me about this fund is the recurring items that we get. I mean, we're in 2024, the budget we're currently expending, you know, in the budget book here, fiscal 2024 priorities, number 3 was to add a 0.5 FTE utility technician to assist in the implementation of the city's updated TMDL. Okay, well, that same line now is in the current budget. We had a half-ton pickup or maybe a 1-ton flatbed in both budgets. Now, I understand that we don't need to, if we can't get it bought for whatever reason, we don't need to do that. But this is why I think we need to be able to report back all budgets and say, we had this budget, we had this utility tech position budgeted, we didn't fill it, and here's why. We're ready to fill it now. We didn't buy the 1-ton flatbed pickup. We didn't buy the half-ton pickup for the project manager in 24, but we're going to buy it in 25, and here's why. It's when we tie up items and I'm not suggesting that we didn't intend to do that, but when we tie up large either, personnel deals or, fractions of vehicles, those are all in line items. That reduces our fund balance that we're forever trying to keep as healthy as we can. And so we got a lot of stuff budgeted in those areas that demonstrates a need in the fund balance. And it's just a conundrum. I mean, I think we need to find a better way of reporting when things are not spent. It just adds to credibility and everything else. And I'm not sure how we jump from, one rate study chart to another one with different numbers. So, I've got some heartburn on this one. I don't disagree that this is a necessary one. There are some things that are coming down the road that we're going to need. So I'm supportive of the concept. I'm just, it troubles me, the way we're presenting.
Do we want to hear more from perhaps Mr. Cooper about the rate study versus what this recommendation is? Is there something specific you can tell us about that? Russ Cooper, Public Works Director, joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate the question because there is some, it does draw some question when you hire a consultant to do a rate study 5 years ago. And we did that when we established the utility. At that time, there was a lot that we didn't know about necessarily operating the stormwater utility as its own fund. At that time, we were co-joined street fund and our stormwater fund. As we've operated that fund, we're more aware of what it means year to year or day to day to operate that fund. As we moved through those first couple of years, we kept the rates the way they are. Every year we do a five-year projection, and those 5-year projections are what have led to some of these later changes in the 5-year plan. I think some of what I guess I interpret some of the observations that you are bringing up is that our rate adjustments may not be keeping pace with what our needs are. And if we were to maintain the rates that were in that 5-year plan, we would actually we would have a need to cut service. With regard to the vehicles, you are correct. We've come out of COVID with difficulty in purchasing equipment. So we have had vehicles that we have not been able to acquire through the process. And so those have not been purchased in a particular fiscal year. And so those monies would have been maintained in the fund and moved into the next year. And so that's the process that we've been working with the vehicles. The half FTE employee, I watch the fund and the fund balance, and I haven't been comfortable with actually hiring somebody in that fund yet, with the concern that at the end of the fiscal year, we may not be in a position to truly, even though the budget, the numbers say that we were in a position to hire it. I've had some concerns about how this fund is moving out. And even in this, as we prepared this budget this year, we have projects that we have a need to actually put them all the way to construction. And what we've done is, in order to maintain our reserves, we've intentionally just put enough money in to do designs, knowing that we're going to do construction. So it's this balance of, we're trying to grow our understanding of the utility. The other thing that we've had that was not included in the early study when we established this, because we established this off of a status quo fund. Our status quo was to do this with failing and collapsing lines. And so a line that we did last year between Highway 99 and Eccles, that would have been a line that we'd have really struggled to say, should we replace that line? Now that we have a fund, it's an emergency line replacement. And so we're going to try to do it right. And so we have had a couple of lines or capital projects that weren't included in that early rate study when we established the utility, that some of those we're starting to develop our list, and we'll include those in this rate study that we're talking about, that will project the next 5 to 10 years. So our next rate study will be better and will be a better reflection of what our needs are in that near 5-year window. But we'll do a study that looks further on beyond that as well. I appreciate, and you're right. I mean, the project up on Stadium, that's what, design that pushed out the construction on that for all the reasons that you're talking about. And I think we all appreciate your watchful eye on that. I would feel better if we had additionally FY25 at 5% increases adopted to help offset current significant inflation increases in materials and services. That's not new. That's not new projects. That's just saying it's going to cost a little bit more. When we jump outside of the accepted, the rate increase, the rate chart that I think we all recognize is wrong. We ought to at least honor it by saying this is how it's going to change and this is why it's going to change. Yeah. Because otherwise, I mean, if somebody with a jaundiced eye on that is going to say, what the hell's going on? So.
Absolutely.
But thanks for your fiduciary responsibility on these larger projects in particular.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for calling that out, John. And as you say, I going through the whole initial rate study, the consultant can only do what we give him, right? And when we said these are the things we think we need to cover by rates, they use that. They don't tell us what projects we're going to need or how much capital we're going to need to spend each year when they develop a rate study. So that they were working with what we gave them. And as you said, we've had emergencies and we know more. We understand more what this fund may need to cover. So appreciate that very much. And understand that each of these rate studies we're undertaking, which are expensive to undertake, but it's worse if we don't do them and if we don't review them every few years, because then it's just none of that's taken into account. So appreciate that. Thanks for the explanation, Russ. And Councilor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. It's from what Ms. Marston said, Mr. Cooper, and Councilor Lopez. We're going to need these rate increases, but adding up each of them, it's almost $7, I think, for households. And I fortunately don't have to keep my pennies every month now, but I remember when $7, I did not have it. And so I know that the Polk County, the Family Resource Center provides support. I know that in the past, City Hall has had a resource center person on here during the shut-off day. I think we don't do that anymore. I'm afraid that with this rate increase, there might be more people in here looking at rate shutoffs. So it'd be really great if we could explore having that person back in here so that people can get immediate assistance. It's really close, it's not that far now because it's just on the street, but I think, I still remember the pink letter that would come in my mail and I had to sweat that out. So it'd be really nice if we could kind of make that easier for people as well. It doesn't take very much for people to get thrown out of their homes and lose their electricity. So whatever we can do to offset that financial worry for them, I think would be great. But I do understand we have to have these rate increases, so.
Would you like to follow that up with a motion?
I will do that, I think. Oh, yes, there it is. I move approval of resolution number 1990, establishing new rates for the stormwater utility fee service charge and repealing resolution number 1968.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilor McKeel, for the motion and Councilor Salinas Oliveros for the second. Seeing no further questions or discussions, Phyllis, roll call, please.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Belts. Yes. Counselor Carey,
No.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1.
Thank you very much. And that takes us to information that really helps our general fund more. So I will, we'll move on to the use of state revenue sharing.
Okay. Bringing to you resolution number 1991. We are required to hold a public hearing on the state revenue sharing. So I would recommend opening the public hearing, and then I can deliver my staff report.
I hereby open a public hearing on the use of state revenue sharing by the city of Monmouth.
Thank you, Mayor Coontz. So I'm here presenting resolution number 1991, an election for the city to receive state revenue sharing funds for fiscal year 24-25. The state revenue is made up of your cigarette tax, your liquor tax, marijuana tax. Those all go into the general fund for general fund use purposes. Also included are the gas tax, the highway taxes, which are dedicated in our street fund. That's what funds the street improvements and those kinds of projects. There was a state revenue hearing that went in front of the Budget Committee. Budget Committee approved it. There are some alternatives. The city can elect to keep the state revenue sharing funds to use for general purposes and the highway tax funds for the designated purpose. You have the option to return the state revenue to the state or use the state revenue sharing monies to offset property tax levies. The Budget Committee approved for the city to keep the state revenue sharing. I should state the amount we're anticipating going to the general fund is $368,703. And we have estimated $885,011 of gas tax revenue coming into the street fund. So with that would conclude my staff report.
And just to confirm, which the question came up, the Budget Committee, those revenues are included in order to balance this budget.
Yes.
And our general fund budget was a cut budget. So any redirection of these revenue sharing for the general fund would cause another deficit balance to deal with. So that was part of that discussion. Councilor McKeel.
I just would like to do a motion. I move approval of resolution. number-
Madam Mayor, we need testimony first. Yep, sorry.
No. Yes, we're going to ask questions and then we'll take public comment. Any other questions of Susie? All right. And is there anyone here who would like to provide public testimony on the resolution to share state revenue? Seeing none, I will close the hearing and we will accept a motion.
Thank you. I move approval of resolution number 1991, declaring the city's election to receive state revenues fiscal year 2024 to 2025.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor McKeel for the motion and Councilor Lopez for the second. And seeing no additional, Councilor Lopez with an additional comment or question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank Councilor McKeel for making this motion. This is an interesting quirk of Oregon budget law that generates a significant amount of discussion at the Budget Committee meeting each and every year. And at the end of that discussion, historically, we have always ended up at the same place. It is better to keep these monies than to send them back to the state. It is also better to utilize these monies for the general fund than to offset property tax levies, which would then result in fee increases in other spaces or service level reductions. And so it always makes me chuckle a little bit to go through this process each and every year for these monies. And I am happy to put it behind us for this year. Thank you for entertaining my comment.
Counselor Oberst.
And I would like to echo that, Chris, and just note that any property tax relief that came out of this would be relatively minuscule to the average Monmouth homeowner or property owner. Much of this rebate, if we were to rebate this as property tax relief, would leave the community in the hands of utility companies that have pipes in the ground and so on. And rather than handing Northwest Natural a bonanza, I would rather see this money be invested in our community and the services to the residents of this community.
Yes, if you want to know just how much, I recommend the Polk County Tax Assessor's Office top 10 taxpayers in the city of Monmouth, because Counselor Oberst is right. It's none of us. All right, seeing no additional comments or questions, Phyllis, can you please call the roll on resolution number 1991?
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Oberst.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, and that takes us to the big kahuna.
Okay, the final resolution of the evening is resolution number 1992. And this is a resolution for adopting the 24-25 budget, making appropriations, levying ad valorem taxes, and adopting the capital improvement plan for 24-25. I provided a staff report, which I'll briefly go through. The total approved budget from the Budget Committee for fiscal year 24-25 totals $51,525,867. This is about a 13.5% decrease from last year, largely attributable to the completion of this City Hall building. We obviously don't have that included in this year's budget. And it also, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but we had some challenges budgeting particularly the general fund, which meant we had to make reductions across all departments in the general fund, including materials and service, personnel services costs, and deferring some capital improvement projects. To help with that, the City Council, you all approved a reduction, a reserve requirement reduction from 15% down to 12.5%, with the goal of looking forward to get back to that 15% in future years. But we appreciate that assistance to help us balance the budget and look towards future years. So the capital improvement plan over 5 years totals $8,924,130. The projects represented in that plan for fiscal year 25 are all included in this budget. Let's see, so I covered the, So I talked a little bit about the reserve requirement being reduced to 12.5%. For fiscal year 24-25, we do anticipate meeting the 15% reserve. The challenge becomes the years after that. And so at the budget committee meetings, we talked about the idea of a public safety fee, which the budget committee was supportive of. And staff feels that it's going to be necessary to generate extra revenue, and that is a proposal that we made that would help in the future. So that's been referred to the council, and I think we're going to move forward on that. So that will help us out.
Move forward on discussion.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So moving on, just briefly going through reductions that we made and were approved by the budget committee. I mentioned deferring capital improvement projects. We are looking to transition criminal cases out of our municipal court, which reduces our court budget by about 40%. We also had reduction in personnel costs across all departments except for the senior center. Unfortunately, this includes the elimination of our assistant city manager position that was approved last year's budget season. We're also reducing hours with our municipal court clerk and court records clerk. Also, hours are being reduced for 2 part-time library assistants. This won't reduce the service levels or hours that the library will remain open. We did implement a hiring freeze in our police department. We're not going to fill an officer position, at least for this year. And we also were able to reallocate staff out of the general fund for parks into other divisions of public works for cross-training and extra support in those areas. Non-represented employees will not receive a cost of living adjustment for 24-25. The Monmouth Police Association contract is currently under negotiation, so we did not include a COLA for those represented employees pending negotiations. The employees represented under IBEW, which are the power and light employees and some public works employees, they will receive a 3% COLA this year. Their contract expires June 30th, 2025. So contractually, they will be getting a 3% COLA. Having said all that, all employees are still eligible for the step increases, which are about 3% between each step, and those are built in to this budget. Highlights across all the other funds, the utility rate increases that were just approved are budgeted here and accounted for. We are planning to use about $400,000 of ARPA funding to support a water project to drill the Marion County number 1B well and abandon the number 1 well, as well as some electrical upgrades. We're anticipating having to issue some debt this year from our sewer fund to support the construction of our recycled water site development. Monmouth Power and Light, we mentioned we've got a rate specialist budgeted for coming in. They're also planning for some security upgrades at those facilities. As far as the ARPA funds, the city received a total of $2.35 million. A couple of years ago, we have just been slowly spending that down in accordance to a council-approved spending plan. We have about $850,000 left to go. Under a separate agreement, the ARPA funding also supports our trolley operations. Those will take us through June 30th, 2025. Continue to use that on operating the trolleys, and we also have money planned to build a trolley storage building and also make stop improvements along the route. Also, in this budget, we're anticipating a 19% increase on our property and liability insurance premiums. And that is just due to added exposures, and the property trends have increased 7% when normally they're about 3%. So I think that's a reflection on just the economy that we're in. I think it's important to note that we have gone out and looked in the market and, looked for different insurance alternatives as a way of maybe saving money. We did get a response back from one that we applied for. We were not approved, but we'll keep trying and working with our agent. So I think I hit it all, but this budget is balanced, and it's been reviewed and deliberated in front of the budget committee. It's been approved. It maintains the existing service levels despite the hour reductions that we had to make, and it addresses certain council priorities and also meets the city's fiscal policies. So with that, I would turn it over to you.
All right. And I believe we have to have a hearing on this as well. So we've received the staff report, but I will open the hearing to consider adopting the 2025 year budget capital improvement plan and adopt an ad valorem tax and levy taxes. And are there any questions for Ms. Marston? All right, and is there any public comment? Anyone who would like to comment on the general fund budget presented and the overall budget totals presented this evening? Seeing none, I will close the hearing. And at this point, we can have additional deliberation or a motion as presented in your packet.
I would love to move approval of resolution 1992 adopting the budget, making appropriations, levying ad valorem taxes in the amount of $398,070, and adopting the capital improvement plan for the 24-25 fiscal year.
I'm going to ask if that I believe we have to approve the permanent rate as well as levy the debt service taxes. Isn't that correct?
Yes, so to your motion, you can add, where is that number?
It's in the resolution, so the motion is fine. All right, yes, it is in the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Shetterly. Maybe I'll cut down my motion at the school district next time, because I make them say everything.
I would feel more comfortable if the council did actually include the rate per thousand in the motion.
Motion that a tax rate of $3.6107 per thousand of assessed value is what I see in the resolution.
That is correct.
For purposes of the permanent
For purposes
rate.
of the ad valorem taxes for this budget, yes.
And is there an amendment, the second?
I amend the second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded as amended to adopt resolution number 1992, adopting the budget, making appropriations, levying ad valorem taxes in the permanent rate of $3.6107 per thousand of assessed value, and the total debt service, general obligation debt service of $398,070. Any questions or comments? Councillor Lopez and Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As was alluded to earlier in this meeting, this was an incredibly difficult budget to come to and pass by the Budget Committee. This budget is, as our mayor noted earlier, a cut budget. The largest area of cuts in this budget is due to us not building another city hall this year. However, there are significant cuts that were made within this budget and difficult decisions that were made by city staff, by department heads, by the budget committee, and by the leaders of the budget process. And it is with a with a heavy heart and impacts on the families and individuals that are directly impacted, and with impacts, knock-on impacts of the rate increases that will impact our residents and our families here in this city, for time to come. However, I do support this budget. I think that it is, despite being a difficult budget to come to, it is a good budget and something that I can be proud of here as a city councilor. I would like to thank the members of the budget committee. I would like to thank each and every one of our department's heads. I'd like to thank Christy Worcester, and I would like to thank most of all Susie Marston for the massive undertaking that putting this budget together was, and that wrangling all the hard questions and disparate views of the budget committee into a positive result for this community. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
The shortest comment Counselor Carey has ever made. Thank you. He summed it up. Yeah, I think we all what he said, right, on that. Counselor Obert.
So back when measures 5 and 4750 were passed, local governments and school districts, counties around the state said this is going to be devastating. And it hasn't been. These local governments have managed to keep moving along without devastating massive cuts. I think maybe this year we're starting that prediction finally start to come true when we see 40% or 40% cut in Salem Kaiser. It's huge, and cities all around us are having to slash their budgets. It's not as if the city of Monmouth has been profligate, that's a hard one, in its spending. The old joke I've heard for years is they're sharing pencils down at City Hall. It is, we run a tight ship around here, and yet we have had to snug the belt up several notches. And a big part of that is a property tax system that doesn't really function fully the way property tax systems are intended to. It leaves aside the question of, is taxing property the way to fund local government? That's a different question. But certainly having the gulf between the current level of assessed value on properties and the real market value has become problematic. When we have brand new construction, like what we see on the S-curve, being downvalued for taxation purposes, back to a basis of, what is it, Councilor Shedley, 1989?
94, 95, I think,
95.
3% a year after that.
So we dial back the value of these new projects and then let their value step forward at 3% a year. So not even new construction is being valued at what it costs to construct it. And it is really hurting local government. I obviously, by my long involvement, am a proponent of local government. Doesn't get any more personal than what we do in this room. Creating the programs, creating the services that make our lifestyle and our community possible. There's an old quote that's apocryphally assigned to a Supreme Court justice of, I like paying taxes, it's the price you pay for civilization. That said, he also said you're supposed to pay the least amount possible, but I think we maybe have gone beyond that now. And I would urge our state legislatures to begin looking at what remedies are there, perhaps, to fund local government in a different way than with property taxes, or to further reform our property tax system so that it generates revenue sufficient to run our schools and run our fire departments and run our emergency services, our city government, our county government, and see if we can't move this thing forward. This has been, as Councilor Lopez noted, a hard year. When I first started as an elected official, we had something like a 40% budget reserve. And to see us down to looking at 12.5 and still having to lay off people is hard. So I talk to myself about this topic regularly. I worry about the future of local government with the system we have in place now. I'd like to see some kind of resolution. I don't know what it is. Thank you.
I'll just add that at a recent meeting, Christy Worcester, who's been at this city budget stuff a lot longer than any of us, said it's the hardest budget season she's ever been through. So we are not alone. All right. Seeing no other comments or questions, Phyllis, could you please call roll on resolution number 1992?
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Great, and thank you, Susie, and we look forward to, as mentioned, further discussion about our Budget Committee's recommendation to consider a public safety fee as a way to restore and stabilize our public safety services. And at this point, that is tentatively scheduled for discussion on July 2nd at a work session, and then our July 11th City Town Hall that we invite folks to learn more about what that means and what services we can expect if we do take that next difficult step. That brings us to our reports, and I don't have much of a mayor's report. It seems like we just met, so I will entertain reports of council representatives, boards, and commissions. Councilor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I have two committees that I will report on today. The first is the Parks and Rec Board. The Parks and Rec Board met on May 8th, and this was our final meeting before the traditional summer recess of this board. The summer recess is due to a number of issues. One is that it's historically occurred to take a couple months off during the summertime. The other, which we did find out on May 8th, is that the space that the board historically meets at the Public Works building, that the parks and the parking lots around that building are heavily utilized throughout the summer and actually throughout the spring. It was pretty fantastic driving into that board meeting and finding a jam-packed parking lot. Families, kids, playing ball in the fields, utilizing the skate park, observing, the games that were going on, and it was literally, standing room only out there, and no parking spots had to be found. I myself parked a couple blocks away and walked it, which I was happy to do. And so the Parks and Rec Board will take a summer recess. During that recess, they will conduct a parks tour. And during these tours, they alternate 1 year large parks, the other year small parks. This gets the Parks and Rec Board out into the parks instead of sitting in a boardroom and in a very real sense, experiencing how the parks are being utilized, what the issues or challenges might exist in each given park, and helps those multitude of minds and eyes experience the real needs of our parks and of our community when they interact in and with our park system. So very much look forward to engaging with that parks tour. In addition to the discussions regarding the summer recess and the preparation for that tour, the Parks and Rec Board did address some slight shifts and clarification in their approach to park reservation fees. Now, these park reservation fees, and it's a small fee that if you're reserving a portion of a park, we have a number of parks that are reservable for birthday parties or other activities. It was identified that these fees had not been implemented in a consistent manner, and that there was language that currently still exists that allows for the fees to be waived for government entities, for nonprofits, etc., but still assessed for kids' birthday parties and things. So the nature of it is that the lighter usage of these park areas, birthday parties, graduation parties, things of that nature, was generating a fee. Whereas the heavier usage was, that is due to public events and, company events, was often being waived. Fee was often being waived. And so the Parks Board does intend to discuss this more in their future meetings, and will in the future be coming with recommendations back to the council on how to address this. It was a significant point of discussion and an excellent highlight in how we can better craft our policy, which impacts the use of our parks. So really riveting meeting actually there on the Parks and Rec Board. That concludes my report on the Parks and Rec Board. My next report is on the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance. Now, the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance went through their budget process as well. It was a difficult budget process for different reasons than Monmouth budget process was difficult. The Alliance received a significant amount of funding from the state in one-time funds. And those state funds were intended as capacity building funds for the Alliance. So the state expects that those funds to be used as capacity building for the Alliance. These are one-time funds though. So how do you use them? There were proposals on the table for significant staffing increases at the Alliance level. And most, if not all, budget committee members there had some reservations on those staffing increases. Currently, the Alliance has one FTE filled and had 2 others approved. The staffing increases proposed were increasing that 4-fold. So huge increases for a small organization. After much deliberation, the budget committee determined that a much smaller increase of a few more FTE, not going to 12.5, but going to just adding a few additional FTE was prudent. And through this, the city of Monmouth, and I'm sure you all know, does pay a very small fee toward the act to support the activities of the Homeless Alliance. Through this process, the fees assessed for the member municipalities and cities were kept steady without any increases to Monmouth. So historically, there has been between a 5 to 10% increase in those assessments. This year, those assessments were kept steady to to lessen the burden on the cities. So they did end up passing the budget, and the organization is ready to move forward into their next fiscal year. In addition to that, in matters that do impact our city, there was a presentation from Church at the Park regarding their plans here in Polk County. The presentation dealt with their plans in both Dallas and their plans presented in Monmouth. Originally, the plans were somewhat vague as they were firming them up. At that time, the Homeless Alliance instructed Church at the Park to come back with a firmer plan, with something that was more clear. I won't go into significant detail of that plan. That is for the homeless or for the church to present. However, the nature of the adjustments from what was originally approved by the Alliance was that it would be dual sites. And the total number of individuals housed in Monmouth would be cut significantly, and they would not be bringing in the temporary trailers to house people in Monmouth. Now, the Homeless Alliance does not control whether this project moves forward. But as an intermediary agency that does have some oversight over the contract process with the state and that organization, they determined that there were not hugely significant modifications to any existing contract, and with that information, instructed that they gave the approval to move forward. So I'm sure that we will discuss this more in this room in the future, and I very much look forward to those deliberations at that appropriate time and place. That concludes my report from the Homeless Alliance. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other boards and commissions, Councillor Belt.
So I attended the senior board meeting on May the 28th. And there's a couple events that the senior center is hosting that are of interest. They're having a Juneteenth celebration on the 19th of June. They're going to continue to have the Ages Cafe, which is where they bring together people of all ages to have interesting dialogue about their lives and their experiences. June the 20th, the Oregon Credit Union is putting on, they're doing an every other month event, and this is an event called Budget on a Fixed Income, and it's intended to help seniors that are transitioning. And so every other month now, Oregon Credit Union or another fiscal financial agency will be putting on an event. Let's see, the senior center is going to be reviewing their code of conduct. They do have a code of conduct of the expectations of people that are using their center. They actually, for the first time, had to ban someone from using the center because that individual continued to, their behavior continued to be unacceptable to the residents, to the people that work there and people that were enjoying the senior center. But they're going to review their code of conduct, and then they'll be discussing it with legal counsel, of course. Their next meeting is June the 25th. And just as a side note, one of the other organizations that I represent with council is on the SEDCOR board. And SEDCOR does industry tours. And several weeks ago, I toured a cabinet facility in Salem. It was fascinating. And the next time one of these industry tour comes up and available, I can invite any of you because we're all members. And so if you see that cross your email, you'll know why I've sent it to you. So thank you for that.
Great, and Councillor Carey.
Just a note on the Planning Commission meeting tomorrow night. On the agenda, as I've read it, there's a design review discussion regarding the proposed renovation of the building at Main and Broad. Under the, sort of on one end is 10 Republic and on the other end is Old Haugens, with a theater in between and others. So there's a plan to restore that in a historically appropriate manner. And that should be interesting, and well, let's hope it comes to fruition. And then also on the agenda is a review of the Western Oregon master plan. So they've got some slight adjustments apparently to be made in that. And that's on the agenda for tomorrow night, 7 o'clock right here in River City.
Thank you. Councillor Elbert.
Two quick ones. We have our very first meeting of the Transportation Commission coming up on the 17th. Now, this is the old Traffic Safety Commission given a little bit of new authority and 2 new members. So it's a step forward in our attempts to encourage alternative modes of transportation besides the automobile to have this body formed up. Monday the 17th at 7 p.m. at the police station. And last time we talked about the transportation systems plan, public comment opportunity that was going to be this month. No, it's going to be in July instead of June, July 23rd. Don't have a time or place yet. I'm going to assume here, probably don't have a time though. So keep your ears to the ground. We'll have an announcement about that when we know more.
Did you have anything else, Councilor Roberts? No. And Councilor Bell?
I'm sorry, I did forget to mention something very important. The senior board is short 2 members. We had a resignation, and then we've had an open seat. One of those new members does not have to live in Monmouth. The other does need to be a Monmouth resident. But please, if you're interested, contact Barbara at the senior center.
And just generally speaking, Phyllis has received applications from folks whose terms have expired on boards and commissions, and she'll be sending that out to all of us for consideration for reappointment. So we'll get those positions filled and see where we land. All right. And that takes us to our city manager report. And I think Christy has a couple of things of interest, including some things that have come up to us in the last couple of weeks. So.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that you have all received an invitation from Congresswoman Salinas and the City of Independence for an economic development roundtable discussion and resource fair scheduled for June 17th. If any of you have an interest in attending that, if you could RSVP to Phyllis so that we can notify them of who will be attending. I will not be able to attend that day, but our Community and Economic Development Director, Suzanne Duffner, will be attending on my behalf to talk about the city's economic development projects, our successes, and what we can look forward to in the future. We had some discussions earlier about transportation, and we've been talking internally about having an update, a joint meeting between the council and the planning commission to provide you with updated information on the TSP. So I think we're going to have an open house on July 23rd at a time yet to be determined, followed by a joint meeting between the council and the planning commission if you are all available to attend, or if we at least have a quorum for July 30th. So if you'll check your calendars, and I'll have Phyllis send out an email to you asking for affirmation on your availability if you don't know tonight. Let's see. Coming up on the next agenda, I won't be here for that meeting, and Suzanne Duffner has agreed to act in the capacity of the city manager during my absence. One of the things that we'll be presenting on the next agenda will be a discussion on our legal services. As you know, as part of the adopted budget, we're transitioning the misdemeanor cases over to the county for processing. That will require us to amend our agreement with our city attorney, because that is one of the elements of the legal services that Lane's office provides to us through a subconsultant, Mo Brown. And we are going to be reaching out to Attorney Brown to see if he will still enter into a contract with us on an hourly basis to continue to provide those services as we transition that service out of our court. Now, there could be cases where there's a traffic violation and someone hires an attorney. We would then bring in Mr. Brown to represent the city on a case where there was another legal entity involved, as well as transitioning the closure of some of those existing cases out throughout the court. So you'll see that on the agenda, and you'll be here, Lane, to answer any questions that might come up during that meeting, but I wanted to let you know about that as well. And then finally, at your last meeting, you received correspondence from Mr. Jordan, who resides in the 500 block of Warren Street. And he made a request with regard to reconsideration of truck parking on city streets. And I haven't heard from any of you that you have a desire to revisit that ordinance, but I did want to let you know when you receive requests like that and you want to direct the city manager to do something other than enforce the ordinance, that is your time, if you receive correspondence, to then have a discussion whether you want to revisit the ordinance or not. I'm not recommending that you do that, but if there is a desire to, this would be the time that you could give us direction to bring that back for future discussion. And then that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you. And I just also want to confirm, because also in our future agenda items, that emergency shelter siting review process. And I know we have been continuing to say that that Church the Park was going to go through a pre-application process before we even saw for an actual application. Can you update us on that?
Yes, we were scheduled for a pre-application meeting tomorrow. That meeting has been canceled since we do not have the application materials required for staff review prior to that meeting. So that will be rescheduled once that information is received. I can't give you a date because I don't have an update on that.
Okay, so not in the near future will the issue of that shelter be on our agenda. We'll just continue to look for that, and opportunities for public input continue. We do appreciate emails, letters that we've gotten. That does help us. Unfortunately, because many of them discuss specifics that we don't have specifics to respond to. So thank you for that. And John?
Christie, question on, and perhaps Lane too, what's the timeline on the approval under, whatever the House bill is?
There's no timeline.
There is no timeline. So it could be as protracted or as short as they choose, or as we choose?
And you're pretty much in charge of that.
Okay.
Yeah, when Dallas was expecting an application, what the council over there chose to do was a process where they would have a series of meetings, maybe take a maximum of a half hour of testimony at each council meeting until the testimony had been exhausted. Who knows how long that might have taken. But it's not a land use proceeding, so that you aren't under the usual 120-day rule that applies to land use proceedings. You're pretty much in charge of that timeline.
Yeah, I'd like us to be able to have time to move one way or the other expeditiously and not be caught in a box. We've got to make something very quick because we're up against the timeline. So that's good. That's good to know. And the degree to which we can in the public comment, it's frustrating. And I know we're in a bit of a box, but the degree to which we can educate the public in terms of what the process will look like when we do have a proposal, and whether that's a handout in the back or whether that's I don't know, something, because I feel like people would like to have a little more than unfortunately we're able to give them, but there might be another way to get there. So just a thought.
All right, we'll talk to Christy and Suzanne about that, maybe what that looks like. Although, again, we did develop a process. That information is on the website. We can certainly share that in printed form as well. Councilor Lopez?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Building on Councilor Carey's question there regarding process, I do note that we received a petition relating to this process. Lane, could you please just recap the guidance given to council regarding this process and petition?
Well, there's not a lot of specific guidance. Application comes in, it will be reviewed by staff to determine that it fairly addresses the criteria in the statute. Statute doesn't prescribe the process for decision-making. In some cities, it's done at a staff level, and that's where it ends. It's a staff decision. You have the ability, if you want to, call it to a public hearing before the council and conduct it like a land use hearing. Again, wouldn't really be a land use hearing, but you can have a public hearing where you become the decision makers. You have the discretion to adopt that, whatever procedure you want, either to direct staff to make the decision, maybe with opportunity for appeal to the council, or you take a hearing straight to the council and you make the decision based on what you hear at the, I suppose you could involve you in the planning commission. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I don't think you need 2 hearings, but if you want to have a hearing before the council, you certainly could decide to handle it that way. Then you become the decision makers.
Thank you.
And I think maybe that guidance you were talking about, the petition was sent to all of us requesting several things. And I think what we got from Phyllis was we couldn't address anything that was specific to that proposal.
Right.
Again, it asked for public input, which we've committed to and we continue to take. And I think the other thing it mentioned, it compared the citing process under 3395 to other decisions that have been made in the community that went through actual code review and the land use process because they applied that don't apply to this. And I think other than you just kind of reminding us, we can't really address any other specifics, right?
Yeah, you can only address an application when it's in front of you, and everything else is speculation at this point.
Thank you both. I think that was the clarity I was looking for.
And then to follow up about the letter we received about changing our parking code, and Christy interested in getting any guidance on whether or not we want to consider that. And I think maybe a little bit of a background on what that code covers. It's not specific, I don't believe, to in this case, it was described to us as a work vehicle that is a large truck. I don't think it just relates to that, correct? So it's not a matter of us saying, oh yeah, let's talk about something relating to people having large work vehicles. I think other kinds of vehicles are potentially included in that we would then also be reviewing. Is that?
Well, one of the requests of the resident is for the council to reconsider section 10.10.040, which is related to the parking of trucks other than pickup trucks. And those include truck tractors and trailers, which is what this particular individual has and is currently parking on the street. One of the provisions in the code is that you cannot have a vehicle that is more than 23 feet in length or wider than 7 feet, except in certain circumstances. That particular vehicle doesn't comply. If you were to revisit the code with regard to this and make a change, then that wouldn't apply to just this one location. It would make the change throughout the entire city. And I think that the code was put in place for consideration of neighbors and other factors. This gentleman has indicated that there has been no complaints by his neighbors, and certainly we can sympathize with his situation. However, the ordinance is in place and it's my obligation to enforce it unless the council deems otherwise. But it's a slippery slope. You can't make an exception for just one person. And while it maybe if a neighbor really hasn't come forward, maybe he starts the truck in the morning and it's noisy and it bothers them, but they just haven't said anything. And so the council could reconsider this ordinance if you choose. I wanted you just to know this from an educational standpoint, since I'm an interim and I don't really know how much you know about what it takes to revise an ordinance and what authorities I have as an individual manager and what authorities you have as a council. I just wanted to make you aware that if you do have a desire, I need the direction from the council to make that change for a future discussion.
Not seeing a will to discuss it as a group, so potentially if you have thoughts about this and want to contact Christy, or I know she speaks to each of us regularly, we can talk about what that might look like. I think the other proposal was to institute a permit system. And again, I know that would be a pretty complex thing to start from scratch and develop. And maybe if anyone has thoughts about that, that would be something you can bring to Christy as well, and she can get some consensus if there is anything that we might want to consider that would be a citywide new way to look at this. Councillor Ober.
This is one of those cases where it seems reasonable to allow this for this gentleman, but the problem is you can't write an ordinance that applies to just one guy and just one address, and it applies to the entire city. That's one of the problems with ordinances. I guess you can call it a problem, but you just can't make a one-time exception for something like this. A permit system, while it might be appealing on paper, there's a lot of paper. That's going to be a load on staff to create and manage a permit system like that. So I would be hesitant on that score as well.
All right, then that takes us to council comments and announcements. And we do have our urban renewal meeting coming up, so hopefully these will be brief. Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to talk about, just briefly, about the Pride celebration that we had this last weekend. There were probably about 400 people, maybe a little bit more. And it was an incredible 4-hour bubble of joy, is all I can describe it as. As people were cleaning up, I was talking with one of the vendors who was so excited about that wonderful feeling that we had at the park that she said, she extrapolated it to, I have to spend some money here. And so she took that, the joy that she had, and she went to one of the restaurants that had a Pride flag displayed and said, well, those people must be connected to this park, this event in some way. And I actually happened to meet her at that restaurant as I was taking my own dinner home. And she said, this is such a great place, Monmouth. I'm going to come and spend my vacation here. I'm bringing my money where this wonderful, welcoming town is. So it was good on all accounts, because I think we really kind of set off who we are as a city. And then I just want to also announce Juneteenth, which is coming up on Wednesday, June 19th. We're going to celebrate that in the Monmouth Senior Community Center from 6:30 to 8. Jameer Abney, who is the admissions director at Western Oregon University. State holiday.
It's a state holiday, yeah.
We'd be glad to take it.
Well, it's a school district holiday, so. Okay. Any other comments or announcements?
Are we ready for the land acknowledgement, or are you? Oh, we're going to. Okay, all right.
I have a question.
Sure.
One of our public testimony about the burn ban, could we get information from the fire department of why they're doing that with old houses? I just want to better understand why that's happening, and is anybody going to get back to him about that, or is the direction for him to go to the fire department?
I have a standing meeting with Chief Stangy next Monday, and so I intend to bring it up as well. But I want to make sure that the elected cities that might ban that practice probably run their own fire department. So I do intend to bring that up with Chief Stangy, and hopefully we'll have Christy get back to us on that. Yep, Councillor Lopez.
I would just like to piggyback on that. I too would like some more information on the results of those discussions and the role that cities hold in this space. Thank you.
All right, if we can, then hold any other for adjournment for this, so we can take a few minutes break before the urban renewal. If there is a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
and all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. And I will call this, it's 8:20. If we can reconvene at 8:30 to hold the urban renewal meeting, that would be terrific. We are adjourned. All right. At this time, I would like to convene the Tuesday, June 4th meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency and ask Phyllis to call the roll.
Ms. Belts,
Still here.
Mr. Carey,
Here.
Mr. Lopez,
Present.
Ms. McKeel,
Here.
Mr. Obers,
Yep.
Ms. Salinas Barros,
Here.
Ms. Coontz.
I am present. And do we have any citizen comments that have been submitted for the URA
We have not had any comments submitted, Mayor Coontz.
or Ms. Coons? And that takes us to the consent calendar. The last time this body met was February 20th. Those minutes were included in your packet.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oberst for the motion and Ms. Belts for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 That sounds like a winner. So we'll move on to the business agenda and invite, she's still the finance director apparently, Susie Marston, up to the table to talk about the budget for the Urban Renewal Agency.
Thank you. Oh, shoot. Not Mayor Coontz. Chair Coontz. Good evening. Susie Marston, Finance Director for the city. I am here tonight to present resolution number 44 following a public hearing.
Hoarding. That's
Oh,
presumed recording.
okay. I'm Susie Marston, City Finance Director. I'm here tonight to present to the Urban Renewal Board Resolution Number 44, which is adopting the fiscal year 24-25 budget, making appropriations, declaring tax increment, and levying the maximum amount of tax available for the Urban Renewal District. Public hearing.
Yep. Yep.
We're good?
So I will at this time open the public hearing of the Urban Renewal Agency and receive the staff report.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Coontz. Tonight in front of you, I'm bringing to you the urban renewal budget for fiscal year 24-25. The total amount of this budget is $1,304,706. This budget did go before the Budget Committee for the Urban Renewal and was approved and recommended to the board for adoption. In this budget, we are estimating approximately $956,000 in tax increment funding, with appropriations in the district's budget to continue making the debt service payments on the $4 million loan from 2021, appropriations to go towards the administrative support we received from the community development staff. Also supporting urban renewal grants and incentives as part of economic development strategies identified in our plan. And we have a couple of capital improvement projects, Gwynn Street East addition with some pedestrian improvements appropriated in this budget. I'll just say quickly, last year the Urban Renewal District prepaid the interfund loan we had for the amphitheater project in anticipation of being able to afford debt service that we planned for last year. However, staff explored that, and it just was not feasible at the time. The cost of borrowing, it just was not feasible at the time. So we're going to look at that in another year and see if the market improves and give the district's reserves to build a little bit to support future debt service payments. So with that, that includes my report.
Questions? Other than you mentioned there were some capital projects and the appropriations do not include capital outlay. It says $0.
Oh, they're represented in the special payments. So those are transfers that go back to the appropriate funds. Thank you.
Right, yeah, thank you. Other questions? All right, I will open it for public comments. Don't see anyone here to comment on the urban renewal budget specifically. So I will close the hearing and entertain a motion for discussion.
I would move adoption of resolution number 44, a resolution adopting the fiscal year 24-25 budget, making appropriations, declaring tax increment, and levying the maximum amount of taxes available.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Oberst, for the motion and Ms. McKeel for the second. Any comments or discussion? Mr. Carey?
Yeah, just that, I would note that this was recommended by the Budget Committee. They did a relatively deep dive into this. And so our Citizen Budget Committee does recommend that we support this, and I concur.
All right, seeing no other comments or questions, Phyllis, can you please poll the board?
Ms. McKeel,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Aye.
Ms. Belts,
Yes.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Ms. Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Mr. Oberst,
Yes.
Ms. Coons.
Yay, yes. Passes 7-0. I love hearing that. All right, and our last item of business would be a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, before we move, or Chair Kuntz, before we move adjourning, did we approve the consent calendar? Did I just miss that? I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank
Aye.
you, everybody. Good night. Thank you, staff, for sticking with us.
This conference is no longer being recorded.